But there was a man there. And he was standing behind Grandma and myself. And he said something so cruel. He looked at Grandma and said very loudly so everyone could hear it. He said, "Will you look at all that good food?" As Grandma was tearing the little coupons off the food stamps. "Would you look at all that good food? My family doesn't eat that good, and I'm paying for that food. Society is buying her that food." And then he turned to my grandma and he said, "Old woman, how are you ever going to pay society back for all that we have done for you? How are you ever going to pay me back for everything I have done for you?" I was so scared. I was 6 years old. I hid behind my grandma. And my grandma reached around and she pulled me out from behind her. And she put me in front of her and she put her strong hands around my shoulders. And she said to that man, "Sir, I'll never be able to pay society back. Sir, I will never be able to pay you back for all that you have done for me." And then she said, "But do you see this child? Do you see this child in front of me? Someday he will pay you back. Someday he will pay society back in ways that you cannot imagine." And then we went home. I put that cereal in the cupboard, and I never opened it up. It stayed there. It stayed there through high school. It stayed there when I went into the military. It stayed there when I came home. I never opened it up. My children have never eaten Frosted Flakes. My stepchildren have never. The foster children that we take in have never. Not at my house. I never had the heart to buy any. And for years as a child, I lived believing that I didn't deserve good cereal like that. It doesn't take much to kill your music. It can be done so easily. But my grandmother believed in me, and it didn't mean anything to me at the time. But some day later, I came to believe in myself. And I realized it was because of my grandmother's belief in me. The sad part is that she wasn't alive to see that her belief in me had finally blossomed into my belief in myself. Who believed in you? And when you finally came to believe in yourself, were they there to see it? And if they were, how much joy is that? And if they weren't, I understand. But there's no less joy. Because they didn't believe in you, so they would get credit for your life. They believed in you because you were worth believing in. When I graduated from high school, I wanted to go to college. And I put in to go to a little liberal college. Commie, pinko, socialist, liberal, left-wing, intellectually elitist private school in Portland, Oregon. They were so liberal when you dialed 911, you got the ACLU. And I got admitted. I was the next to last person to be admitted. And this is what I knew. The next to last person to be admitted into college does not get a scholarship. And even if I had the money to go, I would be the second stupidest person in the school. So I didn't go. I couldn't afford it. But you know the good news? The U.S. government was running a program at that time where you could trade government service for a college education. Anyone remember the name of that program? Yeah, it was called Vietnam. And when I got my acceptance letter to that, I went down to the induction center with 3 things. An overnight bag, a new suit of clothes, and a little bottle of urine from a friend of mine. He had diabetes. He was very popular during the war. People would bring him $5 a thermos and a Hershey bar. And I think you'll appreciate this. Since it was the federal government, my urine passed. It's the same viscosity as Mrs. Butterworth's syrup, and it passed. I'm saying, test it again. You don't want me. Taste it. It's sweet. You don't want me. And they said, we do want you. And they put me on a bus. And they sent me to Fort Lewis, Washington, in the middle of the winter, in the cold, at night, in the snow. And they had me guard Mount Rainier. From what? They said if I fell asleep, they'd put me in military prison. And I'm thinking, I'm going to fall asleep. I'm going to wake up. The mountain will be gone. And I hated the snow. So I said to the sergeant, is there no place warm you can send me? This was an ill-advised query on my part. Where he sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia. How many familiar with Georgia? You know Georgia? I love Georgia. Georgia is the only state in the United States I've ever been in where the restaurants have macaroni and cheese listed as a vegetable. And I went through airborne. When I got done with airborne training, I thought I was going to the 82nd Airborne. That's where you go. They took 5 of us aside and they said, we have an emergency in Vietnam. We need to send 5 of you right over. You're going to be attached to the 101st Airborne. All I said to them was, you have an emergency in Vietnam that you need 5 people for? This doesn't sound good. And I went over there and they gave me my packet. You know, if you're ever in the military, you know that without your packet, you're not a person, so you can't lose it. And I brought my packet, and I brought it to the top sergeant there in the 101st. And he said, we got an opening in a 5-man long-range recondo team. I said, there must be some mistake. I never went to recondo school. I was thinking of something in supply. He said, I'm going to put you on the team. If you're alive in 2 months, I'll send you to recondo school. I said, if I'm alive in 2 months, I won't need to go to recondo school. He said, welcome to the Army. So he did, then I found out what the emergency was. It was the Tet Offensive. So I got to spend the Tet Offensive both in and out of the city of Hue. Actually, in and out and in again in the city of Hue. And we did okay. We made it. And we were there most of the year. And then the last mission that we had was an interesting one. They wanted to create a communication center up real high on a hill in the northern part of South Vietnam. And so they got about 25 radio people, about 50 engineers, technicians, got a lot of TNT. They could blow up trees, a lot of building material. They're going to drop them on a hill, and they're going to build this big radio station for fancy radios. Nothing like they have today. To us, a fancy radio was one where you could talk and not use code. And they had 100 guys that were going to come in and protect them. But they were going to send our team first. So our 5-man team went, and then the engineers and the radio people, and all the building material and the TNT, and 1 week worth of water, and 1 week worth of food, and what we could figure was probably 6 minutes of ammunition. If you don't believe me, we had an 81 millimeter mortar with 12 rounds. How long do you think that takes? And then just regular ammunition. And then the helicopters left the hill to go pick up the 100 soldiers and the rest of the ammunition, the rest of the food, and the rest of the water. And when they got back, a fog had formed over the hill, and the helicopters couldn't get in. So they turned around, and they waited for the fog to lift. They waited 3 days for the fog to lift, and it didn't. Then they waited a week, and it didn't. Then they waited 2 weeks, and it didn't. So we were up there a month with 5 days of water, 5 days of food, 6 minutes of ammunition, engineers and radio people. We were really nervous. And they figured that we weren't going to live much longer because we were surrounded by a lot of North Vietnamese regulars, probably 400 or 500 of them, at the base of the hill. And so they told us to go make noise to make them think that there were a lot of people on the hill. So we broke up the TNT. They were 1 pound blocks. We broke them into ½ pound. We had lots of blasting caps. We'd crawl down the hill, and we'd light them and throw them, and they'd blow up, and we wanted to like fool them that we had ammunition and these were mortars. I don't think it fooled them. You say, could you kill people with TNT? You could not kill anyone with TNT. The only way you can kill someone with TNT is with duct tape. And we couldn't get them to hold still for that. And if we could get them to hold still for that, we didn't need the TNT. So we did that for a while, and then they came back and said, this isn't working. So we're going to bomb one side of the hill pretty heavily one night. And then in the morning, we want everyone to go down that side of the hill. Hopefully you'll be able to make it. But we need 5 people to stay on the hill and make a lot of noise and fight them when they come up to protect the rear. And I'm thinking, I wonder what 5 people they're talking about. I didn't think it was the 5 radio guys, that's for sure. And but we decided we had to do it because that was our job. And we did it. And they came up the hill after our people went down. It was an amazing event. We said goodbye to all of our friends. We gave them letters. I gave in the military. If you think you're going to go and you give someone a letter, you give it to the most competent person you can find, someone actually you think might make it through. And so I gave it to someone I actually liked. And they gave us their hoard. It's amazing. You wouldn't think that with no food for a month that anyone could hoard anything, but soldiers will hoard stuff like you can't believe. And somebody gave me a Swisher Sweet, which is a nasty, cheap little cigar. And he said, did you smoke it? No, I ate it. Somebody gave me a box of jujubes. Remember jujubes?